Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Wong. Today we'll be discussing the creation and recreation of Venus, an explanation and analysis of Titian's Venus of Urbino and Manet's Olympia. As we begin, we'll start with an overview of Titian, some historical context of the period, and who he was. Tiziano Velliceno, also known as Titian, was a leading artist in the Italian Renaissance who painted works of art for Pope Paul III, King Philip II of Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire Charles V. Titian was one of the most versatile of the Italian painters, equally adept at portraits, landscapes, backgrounds, and mythological or religious subjects. Titian was a painter during the High Renaissance. This period was from 1488 to 1576. He delivered works of art and subject matters from literary descriptions of classic works of art, and also painted for the Holy Roman Empire and the Church. During this period, the most noteworthy artists at the time were Leonardo da Vinci, as well as Raphael, Michelangelo, and Botticelli. Similar to these painters, Titian painted things of the court and chose his commissions based on religious figures at the time. Between 1518 and 1532, he served as the court painter for the empire, and from 1532 he became the official painter of the Holy Roman Emperor, in which role he dabbed mainly of portraits. The artists of the High Renaissance were able to pick and choose their commissions easier than today or other periods at the time, and they often wandered from city to city in search of favorable projects. They weren't forced to paint anything if they didn't want to. Meanwhile, wealthy patrons competed fiercely to support these famed artists and take credits as the financiers of the masterpieces they created. Titian was not the only well-known artist at the time of the High Renaissance. This period was between 1488 and 1576. Some of the other artists that influenced the time and the art during this period were Botticelli, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Da Vinci, some very famous names. Below you can see some of their most well-known artworks, as well as their nationality, where they were from, and the art forms that they produced art on, such as sculpture, painting, drawing. This was the main medium at the time during the High Renaissance, and all of these artists, as you can see, also painted very similar arts surrounding the church and the political climate at the time. Now it's time to talk about the actual painting, Venus of Urbino. It's not the actual original title of this painting, and we're not sure who the woman is. The only implication that this woman is Venus is that she's painted nude. All of the images of nude women at this time were generally thought as beautiful, godly, and displayed Venus. They were not improper displays. It wasn't pornographic or seductive in any way. Additionally, you'll notice in the picture we've highlighted the dog at the foot of the bed. It's a sign of fidelity. However, the sign that the dog is asleep is a sign that she's an infidel and that she's done something wrong since he's sleeping peacefully. This painting is also an oil painting in Italy, and at the time they used a technique called glazing. When it's done, it has a translucent look to it, but it also provides the glow that you see around her body, as well as some of the other figures in the painting. The next thing we want to take a look at is the woman is not about sensuality, as we also said, or sexuality, or it is about sensuality, not about sexuality. Because of her gaze in the painting, she's not alluring. She's more giving you her attention. There's a coyness and a directness to her facial features. You'll also notice her long silky hair that cascades down her body towards the bouquet of flowers in her hand, as if she's implying that she's waiting for somebody or that somebody recently came to visit her. The sensuality occurs because the paint, there's no harsh lines, color, within the background or within her. She's very godly-like. Her torso is also a little bit longer, and her feet are a little bit smaller, but you don't notice this as much because of her alluring features that are brought to the forefront. While she is drawn and painted with smooth curves, all the other lines surrounding her are harsher, longer, straight lines. Again, this is to make her seem softer looking in the forefront, whereas the background are a little bit harsher, making her seem as if she's more presentable and more forthcoming about what she is. The other artists we wanted to review today, we're going to do an overview of Manet. Edouard Manet was a French painter who depicted everyday scenes of people and city life. He was a realist painter. He was a leading artist in the transition from realism into impressionism, and much of this had to do with the political climate at the time. From 1750 to 1850, Europe was in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, and they were experiencing the wake of Napoleon's domination over Europe. There was a lot of transition politically, but also because of this, it influenced the art of the time. There were a lot of varying principles of thought that questioned the ideas of government, art, and lifestyle in Europe, and the artist then wanted to display it a little more as if it wasn't as perfect from the previous era. The other idea that did drive this time was Romanticism. Romanticism's foundation was that the reason cannot explain everything. And Manet was a believer in this thought, and from it laid the groundwork of his Impressionist work. He still wanted the air of seduction and the air of mystery to his art. And when he painted his Venus, you see that in it, but it's not as crisp and clean as with Titans. As we transition into Monet's painting of Olympia, there's been a long tradition of female nude during the Renaissance, modestly covering her body. However, Manet does something very modern because he strips away what Titan and Venus Urbino did and removes the academic technique of the representation of space, of the turn of the body and the veil of mythology. By this, we mean that he didn't keep to the standards of art at the time where they painted Venus or Olympia to perfection, showing no imperfections or blemishes. With Olympia, you see a natural woman's body, you see a real woman, as well as the background of which. The images of traditional academic art were sanctioned art and held the stamp of government approval from France at the time. Manet challenged these established ideas of art by changing the way he painted the women. She wasn't perfect, she looks like a real woman, and she was in a very real apartment in France. Her features weren't perfected to any degree like the previous painting. Her face is asymmetrical, and her breasts aren't as even or as perky. You'll also notice in the zoomed-in version of her face, her lips are thin and her skin isn't milky white. She doesn't have this air of perfection, and there isn't the technique of glazing over top to make her glow. In addition, there are usually a sense of coyness to the model of the painting. Manet didn't paint the models to look like this. She's confronting us as if we are looking straight onto her. There's no way to look at her and pretend that you are not looking at a nude body or a nude woman. There's a sense of coarseness to it. And this particular painting, she's viewed as a prostitute. Some of the reasons for this is for high-class prostitutes, she has the orchid in her hair, a gold bracelet, and a ribbon on the neck. You'll also notice that her slipper is cast off of one of her foot. Opposed to the other painting where you saw the dog, Manet paints a symbol of a cat, which at the time was a symbol of prostitution. Additionally, with Manet's Olympia, the other characters in the painting are handing her flowers. This is her maid in the corner. It was viewed to be from a previous customer, and what you're looking at is a moment in time in which the customer has left, and there's a moment of vulgarity to it. The maid doesn't look comfortable handing her the flowers, or Olympia doesn't look happy to receive them. You'll also notice the figure of her body is outlined in black, and as if she is a cadaver in a black body, a dead body at the time. They say her hands looked filthy, since Manet completed some of the modeling on her hand as well. She just looks kind of dirty and a little bit worn. There's also some flatness to her body and not a lot of dimension to it. However, there is the illusion of her toes peeking out from her slippers to show some depth, so that she is not just two-dimensional. Manet removes the mask of academic art, where there was a perception that the painting looked more like photography. Manet wanted to show that convention of traditional art and be honest about the materials that he was painting on canvas, that it is a 2D picture. It is not a three-dimensional photograph, while still showing the beauty of a woman's body. Lastly, we want to compare and contrast the two paintings against each other, both Titian's Venus of Urbino and Manet's Olympia. To start, let's look at the similarities. Both images depict a strong feminine figure provocatively displayed on the bed. She is nude, but she seems to be comfortable within herself. Again, both artists paint the chambermaid as a secondary figure in the painting to assist with telling the story, so that she's not by herself. You kind of have a background as to who she is, as well as what her previous actions were. The utilization of flowers in both paintings indicate a suitor has visited them, and it also tells who they are. While in Olympia, the orchid in her hair implies that she's a prostitute, you don't see that with the crown that's placed on Venus of Urbino. She has her hair pulled back in a beret that looks like flowers, but that's not the indication that was provided by the painter. Again, both artists use soft, pale features to paint the women, while using darker hues to bring her to the forefront. You'll notice that in both, the beds and the linens are of white features, while you have the background is very dark. There is a similarity in the woman's pose in both paintings. They're lying on this bed, and neither women are adorned in clothing as if to distract from their nudity. However, both women have their hair pulled back from their face using clips of the time and are adorned with a single small bracelet. To contrast the differences, Manet's Olympia is outlined in hard, dark lines, and her body is more symmetrical to an average woman's body shape. Manet did not paint her to be godly. He painted her to be realistic to how women looked at the time. Additionally, while Venus of Urbino was painted in soft, thin outlining, giving her more feminine features. You also have a longer torso in the Venus of Urbino and legs to provide more elegance and alluring of her body. If you want to bring this to recent times, you'll also notice women who walked on the catwalk or do the modeling are more often than not tall, slender women with long legs. This was just the idealistic woman in the times of Italy, and you see it here in this painting. Not much has changed from today to back in the day. And Venus Urbino contains multiple figures in the painting beyond the woman and her maid to provide additional symbolism to who she was and how she was taken care of. While we have no definitive answer on who the woman in Venus of Urbino is and who Titian intended on painting, Manet's painting is clearly illustrating a real woman of the time. Manet also did not focus on making Olympia perfect and elongating her features to make her more sensual. He painted her true to life.